Okay, as usual, before we start, I have this announcement to make. This meeting of the Fox River Valley Public Library District Board of Trustees will be held without a quorum of trustees physically present, but is authorized by the Governor of Illinois pursuant to COVID-19 Executive Order Number 5 dated March 16th, 2020, and subsequent reissues, as well as the Governor's Emergency Administrative Act dated June 12, 2020. As board president, I have determined an in-person meeting is not prudent at this time due to the coronavirus pandemic that the governor has declared an emergency. A verbatim recording of this meeting will be made available to the public. In addition, interim library director Roxanne Bennett is physically present at the library for this meeting. Further public notice. Due to the current public health concerns and extension of the governor's stay-at-home mandate by Executive Order 2020-33 and subsequent reissues, this meeting is being conducted electronically. Anyone wishing to observe and/or comment must email libraryboard@foxrivervalleypubliclibrarydistrict.info no later than 12 p.m. on Tuesday, January 19th, and will receive online access to the meeting. If you do not have electronic access and would like to make a public statement, you can call the library at 847-428-3661 before 5 p.m. on Tuesday, January 19th, and leave a message indicating that you would like your message to be read into the record during the public comment section of the meeting. A recording of this meeting will be available on the library's website by Friday, January 29th. Okay, and with that, I'd like to call to order the Fox River Valley Public Library District Board of Trustees meeting of January 19th, 2021. I have it at 7:03 p.m. Okay, we have, do we have our flag to put up for the Pledge of Allegiance? Or no? Okay.
Chris will be right here, she said.
Okay.
She wasn't watching the clock. She was watching news about inauguration. So she'll be on her way.
Okay. Can we please have the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay. Nikki, could we have a roll call, please?
Dave.
Here.
Chris. Absent. Mike.
Here.
Brian.
Here.
Nikki here. Christina. Here. And Richard.
Here. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us after our holiday break. First order of business is our public comment. The board recognizes its responsibility due to the current public health concerns. The January night, say again?
Is anybody else having him break up on them?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-oh. Seems to be all right at this end. Let's, where'd I go? Hold on, just, there we go. Okay.
Seem better now.
Yeah.
Okay. Any person viewing the meeting online and or wishing to comment will be accommodated in accordance with the public notice detailed above. Citizens will not be required to sign in to comment. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes. Is there anyone online with us that would like to make a comment from the public? Is there anyone on the telephone from the public that would like to make a comment? Have there been any messages left at the library from anyone who would like a comment put into the record?
No.
Okay, then we'll move on to the president's report. I sent out an email a week or two ago indicating that we'll have our discussion of the renovation plan next month, that there really hasn't been enough time for Roxanne and the staff to solidify around a specific plan. So rather than just continue looking at what we saw in November, which quite frankly was kind of confusing to me, and I'm sure to a lot of others, that we'll wait until we have a more cohesive plan to discuss, and that we'll target for next. What we would like to start a discussion, however, is on the director search plan. Christina was good enough to take on that task of creating a plan, and I'd like to, Christina, if you're ready, I'd like to turn it over to you to go over that. I had circulated the material this morning to the trustees, but maybe you could take it from here and just explain what all that is.
Real
Sure.
quick, Chris is having login issues, so maybe it is what Christina said about having to update or something, but she's having login issues.
Okay, well, let's hope she can get on.
So in that Google folder, I gave you a kind of just quick little outline of what we could possibly do, which would include surveying the board, surveying the staff, putting together a really good framework for what it is that we'd be hoping for in a director, and then going forward from there. Now, you have the table of the 3 different search firms that we checked with 2 of them last year. Roxanne was good enough to put those together before she left. And then I reached out to 1 more and added that to that list. And I kind of feel like if you look at the table, you've got kind of a good, better, best sort of situation with those. I was very impressed by GovHR's 6-phase plan and how detailed their outline of their plans were. However, I felt like looking at the materials, like the Keister might be the most personalized service because it seems like maybe the smallest firm. So that's really it. Richard and I were talking about perhaps handling that whole building of the framework and then maybe trying it ourselves for a predetermined amount of time, like a very set amount of time. And if we don't have any luck, maybe going to one of the search firms from there, because we're not talking about an inconsequential amount of money. It is pricey to hire a search firm. So I would love to hear your thoughts.
I think we had talked about that, and I had suggested initially when Lauren resigned, I said, could we do an initial, put something out there, whatever, and I kind of got told it's too much work and it's I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of screening. It's a lot of that kind of stuff. And that's why we were going to go with an executive search firm. I am not opposed to trying it, but we're going to need somebody who is willing to take it on as a relatively substantial time commitment.
It really is. And when you look at what the search firms provided and the services that they provide, it gives you a very good kind of outline of what it all entails. It's not just a matter of putting an ad in the paper and finding someone. So yeah, I think you're right, Nikki. It's like a part-time job, really.
Oh, and just for the record, for Karen, Chris arrived at 7:09 p.m. So Chris Evans is now present in the meeting. Chris, can you verbally say you're here? Okay, maybe not.
I'm here.
Okay, there she is.
Yay.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, good. Good evening.
I
Drew.
apologize. I couldn't get in. I don't know what the problem was.
Okay, well, you're in now.
Christina, did you get a feel for under these the sort of pandemic restrictions, like what site? I see all the proposals listed, the number of site visits.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do those look like in this environment, I guess?
They're willing to do them, it seems, but would rather not, is kind of the feeling I get. They'd rather do everything virtually.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Dave, any comments? You're muted, Dave.
Christina's done a lot of work just getting us to this point. It looks like just gathering all this information. Yeah, the do-it-yourself route would be interesting if it just, if it was just a matter of posting the job on a job board somewhere. But it seems like if we want to attract the right candidate for this, there's a lot more involved in it. I'm certainly not volunteering, I guess is what I'm saying. So.
Mike?
I like your idea, Richard, of trying for a period of time, a defined period of time. But I have second thoughts about that because Lauren submitted her resignation October 8th. Over 3 months have passed already, and we're just beginning to scratch the surface on the process. I've been involved with searches like this in the past, and it is time consuming. If we try it internally, I would like to see Roxanne lead that effort, and for a predetermined period of time, and then if it doesn't bear much fruit, then turn to a search firm. Or alternatively, I'm also open to the Christina's presentation of GovHR limited search as opposed to full search, which is kind of a team effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was interesting that they offered that limited scope and then also the full package.
My concern on going immediately to a search firm is the optics of us from a public perspective of committing 18, 20 grand uh, for a search firm without at least trying ourselves. That's my base concern. Anybody see that as a concern in their minds or not?
I did find that newspaper article that Roxanne shared to be a little bit scary.
I think part of it is it's the way they wrote it was for the second time. I didn't get a chance to digest all this because I worked all day and I just got it now. But I did read, that was the first thing I actually looked at for some reason. It was very slanted, and it was also like for the second time in, I don't know, that was the lead.
Sure. 2 years, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So do we know for Lauren's new position then, how did they find her and how did that process work?
They did go through a search firm.
They did.
Yeah. And I thought the name of it was HR Source. And I actually spoke to one of the board members. One of the board members was on the trustee forum along with me, so I had an opportunity to discuss it with her. And they liked that search firm. They kind of like this GovHR, a limited package more or less. And they seem to, they're the ones that apparently contacted or got the word out to it that Lauren made contact with them. So.
Yeah, it's possible that HR Source is doing more. They don't, that's not a major part of their work, but they do primarily HR consulting work. And many of the library directors and business managers, et cetera, belong to their HR roundtable, go to their HR roundtable meetings. So, the folks that are running that they get to know a lot of the, library directors and business managers or deputy directors are often folks that are potential candidates to move into a director position if they're not already in that chair. So they may have a ready source of, someone that they think is looking. Can I add a couple of comments about?
Please do.
Yes, please.
Because there's no guarantee that a search firm process is going to be successful, as you saw with Park Ridge. However, they do offer some benefits like confidentiality for people that are looking and applying for the position. If you have directors who are currently employed in another library, they may be reluctant to, talk to, say, for example, if it was, send your resume to the library. They may be concerned that other people would hear about that. I wouldn't be talking about it, but, just the confidentiality, not knowing, or having other people know that they've thrown their hat into the ring for something is sometimes a concern, at least until they're to a final round. They certainly don't want it getting back to their current employer that they're out there looking. So search firms do offer that level of confidentiality that can make people more comfortable with applying. They also usually really go through hopefully an exhaustive process of getting a good handle on what is a good candidate. The challenge with this is that you're trying to match someone to a community and to a library. And if you're looking at a short time frame and a short time window, then and you've kind of locked yourself into that window, the person that you're looking for may or may not be available in that window. So often I see searches go on. They may get, an initial round. They go through the people that apply. Maybe they don't get very many applicants, or they get, a whole bunch and go through them and throw those out and decide to go back again. That happened at ELA. Because that position was vacant for a year, or very close to a year. There are other vacancies out there right now. Park Ridge is one. Barrington Library, the director at Barrington just resigned, announced his resignation this last week. And so they've appointed an internal candidate as an interim, and have not announced whether they're going to go outside or whether they're going to, appoint the person who's an interim, may end up being the permanent director. It's a little hard. It's a little hard to know what's going to happen there. But their director, who just announced that he was leaving, has been there for 3 years, and he was hired by a search firm. So
let me add, when Roxanne mentioned that, my nephew is been in the search business for over 20 years, and he's done everything from IT to engineering to the healthcare field to blue collar jobs. In the industry, they actually maintain a history, and after a few years, they will go back to the people they've placed in the past. They work the system, so that's a risk of using a third-party firm.
Oh, you mean, and try to source them, try to place them elsewhere?
couple of years here, couple of years there, couple of years at the next place to advance your career.
Yep.
And that was why I mentioned it's a little bit like a marriage. The goal is to find someone who would be really committed to this community and this library, and that's going to stick around. And that was why I worked so hard at mentoring Lauren. And really trying to grow our own. We've got a lot of strength in the management team, and growing that management team, developing those, the folks on the management team does provide some stability for the library, even if you do have people changing seats in the top seat.
I would just like to add a couple of other things. In being involved in personnel searches to take the literacy coordinator place that I had in Barrington, and also the mentoring coordinator, which I had. We did it in-house, and in order to do it in-house, we really had to create sort of a rubric of sorts that would help us profile these candidates that came in. And I'm not sure we did the best job that we could have done, but we tried to put down the things that we felt were our absolute have-to-haves, and some of the things that we wish to have in their background, in their personality. And Roxanne, I can't help but go back to one thing that you said when you first started your comments. Our library at one time, I don't think did a great job of serving our demographics. You and I've talked about that before. And I felt that under your leadership, our library grew that way. And I think under the same was true with Lauren. And I feel very strongly that we have a very specific demographics that aren't necessarily like other communities. And it's going to take a very, very special person to come in and fill your shoes and fill Lauren's shoes. And that's just not to pat you guys on the back, but I had shared with Roxanne when I first came on board that I felt that we had an obligation to our demographics in our community, and I would hate to see us lose that.
Well, and I think that's a really good point, and that's why I stressed so strongly that we want to do a lot of that front end work to build that framework of what it is that we consider to be top priorities in this position, and in the qualities that we're looking for in someone who fills this position. And I really think that it's so important to get input from the staff. You know, they have a very unique viewpoint. They're in the trenches every day. They know what they need in a leader, and it also is so important to give them a voice for their morale and self-efficacy. And so I think that if we take our time, not forever, but if we take our time on this front end and get that input and really build this thoroughly, then that'll help us when it comes to the screening time anyway.
There's no question about that. If we don't have a clear picture of who we're looking for, it's going to be hard to land on the one that we want to hire. And we don't want to do this, have to do this again real soon. So I think your point is well taken. Let's get the picture of the profile of who we want in that position, even before we either do it ourselves or go out to a search firm. I think that's something we got to do up front. Any other thoughts on that?
Yes, Richard. You'll see the little jump drive here. When I came on board, the orientation, on this jump drive was all the various things the trustees have a responsibility for. And one of the items covered on this jump drive was how to recruit a director, or it was more than just recruit. So before I saw your memo today, Richard, that Christina had put together a plan, I started brainstorming early this morning thinking what needed to be done. And like Chris said, we need to clearly define what we're going to do. So some of the thoughts I had was review the job description. The most recent job description is almost 2 years old now. Does the document need any updating, and what changes should be considered? We need to prioritize goals, which was another thing on this jump drive in terms of recruiting people. We need to revisit the strategic plan that has 5 goals and 23 objectives, 4 pages long. If we can condense that down and focus it to a 1-page document that can be presented to prospective candidates, it would go a long way, but we have to be clear in our own mind first what we're going to do before we start discussing with candidates. And then the recruiting effort, even this jump drive provided suggestions in terms of the American Library Association website, the Illinois Library Association website, LinkedIn, IllinoisJobLink.com, and who's taken the time to actually go on the ILA website and see how many jobs are out there. Barrington was mentioned, Park Ridge was mentioned. Look at what your competition is. All that could be done internally, but it does take time. It is, I've been involved in searches for financial people, bankers, attorneys, chief of police, and it can be many, many hours to go through the whole process. And the process isn't just securing somebody. It goes further than that. The on-board process is almost as important so that you don't lose somebody in the first few months or the first year. You got to ensure their success with a strong on-board program. But all that takes time, and I'm concerned that if we don't have somebody really committed internally to dedicate themselves to doing that, and board to dedicate themselves to quickly through a special meeting to really finalize what we want, then the only alternative is to go up to a third party to hold your hand and get it done faster.
Those are good points, Mike. I can't disagree with any of them, actually. So where do we go from here? Christina, what's your recommendation?
Well, if there are no objections, I would like to take on a leadership role in this process with Roxanne, and anyone else who wanted to be a part of it. But I think that Mike's right. We need to start by putting together all of those qualities and qualifications and the job description and all of that, the input from the staff, input from individual trustees, and get that built out, I think, as soon as we can. And then I think that if we want to try to do it in-house, we should give ourselves a time limit, 2 months, 3 months, whatever the case may be, to go through that process in-house. And then at the end of that, if we do not have any luck, then I think we would have to talk about digging deeper into those search firms and making a determination from there.
Okay, I would suggest that we would have then form some kind of a committee. We can have up to 2 trustees work with Roxanne, and they don't have to. We don't have to have a formal meeting to do that.
If you appoint them as a committee, you do. So I think
even if there's only.
If it is a committee, if it is a search committee, yes. You've got your vice president. If you're talking about the board as a whole, 2 people can do a project, but you can't create a committee. So it could be Christina, it could be Christina and Richard.
A committee versus a project group.
A project group sounds good to me.
Or just 2 board members, the president and the vice president, to come back to the board with next steps, or the secretary and the vice president, or a trustee and the vice president, or, you know.
That's a good point,
Yeah,
Roxanne, because you don't want to be in non-compliance with Open Meeting Act. And it's a litigious group out there now, and
That's right.
I'd hate to see us get into something like that.
No, we don't want to get anywhere near there. So it would just
Especially in
be
matters of
I think,
personnel.
two trustees in consultation then with Roxanne.
Yeah.
Who would the second one like?
For the leadership position, I'd be happy to volunteer to do that. I'm not very-
Wonderful. I was hoping, Chris, I was
but I don't
hoping
wanna
you
be the
would.
leadership.
Chris, I was hoping you would. You mentioned you had some background on doing those kinds of things.
I do.
So perhaps you and Christina can work on, as I see this project, would be incorporate some of the comments that Mike made, look at these different things, come up with as concise a description and profile of what we need in the way of a director. And then we could either discuss it next month, or if you come, we can always call a special meeting if need be. So is everyone okay with that?
Sounds good to me.
Dave,
Yes, yes.
Mike,
If they move expeditiously, weeks, not a month.
sure. Okay, Brian? You're muted, Brian.
So I say, yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. Well, let's go on that basis, and we'll see where we go. If we don't hear from you before, we'll have a review at our next meeting. And hopefully we'll be in a position where we can start narrowing this thing down into a document that the entire board can agree on.
Sounds good.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Good job, Christina. Thank you very much for your work. That's all I've got in the way of President's report. Roxanne?
Okay. I'd like to make a couple of announcements before I get into questions about reports. We received in December distribution from the closing of Carpentersville TIF 1. Yay. That's the industrial TIF that's north of Spring Hill Mall on 31, kind of up near Bruner, just south of the new Longmeadow Parkway overpass over 31. And that's been finally came to its end, and they closed it and distributed monies to each of the taxing districts, and our balance was $12,374.24 in surplus. So that went into our account, and our levy this next year that property will be levied for increased library taxes for the first time in the coming year.
Very good.
Then on Lauren's last day, she got an email that the first distribution of CARES Act money was available to be picked up. So she had to pick it up personally. So she had to make a run down to Geneva to the state's attorney's office and picked up a check for $25,683.42 for expenses through August 30th or August 31st. And I just finished submitting our receipts for September through December 30th. So that's into the state's attorney's office now in the CARES Act portal, and we're waiting on a response from them. Some of the things that we are unlikely to get the full amount that we were initially awarded, because we didn't spend the full amount. Some of the expenses that were in the budget, the application budget, we didn't actually expend. In part that was janitorial. When we closed Randall Oaks, we had less in janitorial expenses, but it's fine. We're not getting reimbursed for money that we didn't expend.
Roxanne, how much is the amount we submitted this time?
We had 22,000. Let's see here. What was left in the award was 22,425.85, and what I submitted totaled, oh shoot, where's my spreadsheet? I guess I have to open the document. I didn't print out the spreadsheet. It was around 21,600 and change. So we're about $800 short. Some of that, however, of what I submitted were items that were not, commodities that were not in the original budget plan. But they were things that weren't anticipated at the time that Lauren actually detailed all of the expenses, but that were ordered and received before the end of the year. And so I added those to try to get us as close to the 22,000 as I could, and we'll see what they allow. I don't know whether they will allow all of that, whether they will require an official budget adjustment, paperwork, etc. I'm waiting on a response from the Attorney General's office about that. So.
Okay. Well, whatever our share is, as long as it's we can document everything, that's all we can go in with.
Right. Yeah, Karen did a phenomenal job of documenting things as they were coming in, creating a spreadsheet so that we had something from which to pull to add expenses when some of the other things were less. And so we worked with her spreadsheet on that. Mary did a great job scanning additional documents, getting everything ready for me to submit. So there we are.
Good.
Okay. Next item is you probably saw that King County went without a whole lot of fanfare, moved to Tier 2 of the COVID mitigation level, effective yesterday. It was announced yesterday and then effective immediately. I think I first saw it yesterday evening. And so management team's been busy looking at what does that mean to us, because they also changed some of the rules on what you can do in the different tiers. So we're looking at going back to opening the library again to in-service internal browsing at 25% capacity level, similar to what we were doing in the fall and summer. Still with masks, and discontinuing curbside. We're looking at what the implications of that are on staffing, depending on how many hours we open. for, whether we look at full hours or something less than that. Right now, our curbside hours stop at 5 o'clock, and we were already looking at extending those as as we get a little more daylight. Now that we, are looking at coming inside, then we don't have those concerns about hours, about it being dark outside.
Roxanne, is it at all possible to continue to do curbside even if you're open, or would that be too arduous for you guys?
Yeah, I think it would not. I think it would be difficult to do because with the curbside, we've got the tables out there in that whole lobby area. We would still continue the home delivery as an option. I don't know. What do you think, Heather?
I think unfortunately the difficulty is that would require more staff to be in the building. And that's probably the biggest danger of reopening, is having too many staff in the building at one time. So we would likely have to increase the limits of patrons we had in the building if we continue to offer curbside. And we wouldn't have a really good desk setup to do it either. If it was really slow, we could maybe look at it.
Is it intended just to open Dundee and leave Randall Oaks closed for the time being?
We're looking at that because we can't do curbside. We can't do curbside at Randall Oaks, but we can do in person. I would like to have us open Randall Oaks.
Okay.
Is there?
We're short staffed for Randall Oaks right now. We would be short staffed because we've lost some staff. So again, we're looking at staffing implications and
Sure.
what it means to us. So.
Okay.
Would there be any way to do kind of a compromise, kind of like Panera rapid pickup, where it's kind of like curbside, but not really, where it's all checked out to them and they just run in and grab it? I don't know, just a thought.
I haven't used Panera Bread. Do you call in advance and tell them that you're coming at a time to check it out?
Yeah, that's what they do.
I think we definitely could do something like that.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That would be really cool, I think.
Yeah, we could so that sounds like a good one, rather than having people come in and have to pull something off the shelf and then go to the self-checkout.
Mm-hmm.
Just have it be ready.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And is the board pretty uniformly supportive of having Randall Oaks open at the same time, if we can?
Sure.
The caution, we aren't looking at we're not looking at, like tomorrow. We're looking at several weeks out because we do have to, work on scheduling staff again, and we have things that we are going to have to move around in the building. So we've got some adjustment that we need to do in the building, and then we would need to get the word out.
Yeah.
And
I would say.
I was going to say that also gives us time to assure ourselves a little bit that the metrics are sticky enough that we won't be looking in, a week or 2 weeks at backing it back off again. Because I think, providing things and change, the constant changing it's tough for the public to get used to.
Yeah.
My tennis here, the Randall Oaks.
Well, you guys are the best judge.
Having Randall Oaks open, I think, would be to whatever extent we can staff it properly, would be a real plus because of that large new housing development. And we've got a lot of newbies that are almost walking distance away.
Right.
And it would be great to lure them in as newcomers to the community.
Yeah, I think at current capacity levels, we'd have a limit of 10 in Randall Oaks at a time. And 25 at the 50 at the Dundee Library. 75 at the Dundee Library. Okay.
That includes employees, right?
The 10 doesn't, we would have 2 employees. It has a capacity of 12. 75 would include employees for Dundee.
Okay. And Roxanne, you mentioned that we've lost some employees.
Yeah, we have not filled a vacant position over there. And we had moved some, Randall Oaks employees to Dundee to have them continue working while Randall Oaks has been closed. So, we'll be moving them back, and then we, be looking at, are we short here? Are we able to sustain here? So, again, we have not worked through all of those metrics yet because this is fairly new.
Have we lost employees due to, just the general COVID situation and furloughs?
We've had some people go for other jobs. We've had people that were on furlough look for other positions. Yeah.
Well, you guys are, the staff is the best judge of how to move forward and when to move forward.
Yeah.
So just keep us informed of your plans, and you guys have done a great job up to this point with everything you do to provide the best service you can. So just do what you think is best.
Thanks for that. On behalf of the staff, they all work really hard.
I've used the home delivery a couple of times now, and it's fantastic. I just have to say.
People really like it. So I think that's something that that if we can sustain and continue that, even after we're back to full service, possibly with some metrics, but if people can't get here, we need to figure out a way to get to them.
Yeah.
I love it when I see the van in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
I get all excited. I'm out walking and I see the van go by. So.
Right. That's great. So any questions about the other documents that were submitted, the strategic plan update? Start with that. Any questions about that?
I had one comment on goal 2.
Yeah.
Objective A, the second bullet. It doesn't make sense. Safe reopening committee planned and put into place safety procedures for patrons and staff in response to various the COVID-19 pandemic.
Aha.
So I just thought maybe we clean that one up. And then I did also love that Karen started a walking club to grow under goal 3, objective D, develop a growth culture for staff. That was cool. I hadn't seen that before. So love that. That's it.
Yeah, it'll be nice when we get things warmer. We'll get that going again. Because right now it's a little on hold because it's hard to walk around the building when you can't be together, too. So
yeah.
Anything else on the strategic plan? Any questions on director's report or department reports or the dashboard?
Just one comment. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Question on the Kirsten's outreach. She references a number of communities that were contacted, but didn't list carpenters. was unresponsive on her report of, where was it? Promoting the curbside service and the home delivery. She reached out to East Dundee, West Dundee, Gilbert's, but she doesn't mention Carpentersville, which is the largest resident body in the district.
I think she was talking about their signage boards. Their electronic signs, and Carpentersville doesn't have one.
Surprising.
Yeah. Well, they're not, Village Hall is not on a major arterial, and I think the other three consider their, that to be a major deal. Of course, I'm not sure what West Dundee.
We were very happy to see that on the Gilbert's board.
Yeah.
That was very cool.
Yeah, I know she sent it out to Carpentersville to include in newsletter and that kind of thing. So,
thank you.
Sure.
The one thing I had a hard time with the director or with the report was it wasn't segmented by the month. So I was like, wait a minute, didn't I just read that?
The goal under goals for November and December?
No, just under, because this report was November and December reports.
The department reports.
Department reports. Sorry, I said director. I meant department reports, but it wasn't segmented. So you'd see going to do this, and then you like 2 paragraphs later, it's I did this, and it's like, wait a minute, I just read that you were going to do it. So I think in the future, which I've seen in the past, if there's 2 months and it's written as 2 separate months, their preface is 2 separate months, and they're just to make it a little clearer.
Yeah.
Once I remembered, oh yeah, this is two, it helped, but it was still a little awkward. So
that was my fault. I didn't put it in there because it was already so long. I think in the future I'll just do them as 2 separate months, right, rather than have it be lumped together.
Thank you.
Yeah, I remember when Heather finished putting together the reports that we had, she in a meeting with me said, I don't know how many pages long it was. She was like, do they really want to read, I don't know,
I do.
25 pages or something like that.
This is one of the most exciting parts of these is reading this and seeing the things that you do. So more is better. I love the pictures. I love the explanations. It's cool to see different department heads share their different components of something.
Mike Tennis here. I thought the reports were exceptionally well done.
Very good. Okay.
Very good.
Good. All right. We'll make sure we keep up with those pictures.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the book club backpacks are so cool too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. They are doing fun stuff.
They really, I mean, you guys really and truly are. Make sure all the staff knows how impressive it is. Just even the little things you do to make it, it's amazing what you guys are doing. It really and truly is.
Thanks, Nikki. So actually one of our librarians in youth services, one of our assistants got started on that. So those books are actually featured in what might be our One Book, One District title. So we're really excited to have launched that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add, with all the compliments going out there, I carefully follow the library's page on Facebook. And throughout this whole thing, you look at the school districts, you look at the communities, and there are absolutely sometimes vicious comments. And I have seen none. I have seen complimentary things time after time after time again. And unless you guys are going down and taking them off, which I don't think you are, I am so proud of our library and all it's done to accommodate our communities. And like I said, I don't see any negative comments. I see lots of positive things. I know Nikki and I both share everything from from your website on our pages, as well as the rest of you probably do, but I'm just not friends with you guys on Facebook. But never is there a negative comment. And I just think that's remarkable with all of the things you have tried to do without getting any negative feedback. It's amazing.
I would absolutely agree with that, and just add on that with everything going on in the world, it's so obvious that the library is a creative, bright spot in all of the gloom. So I'm sure that that's one of your goals in all of this, but you are achieving it. So very, very well done. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that you all notice.
Yep.
So that's all I've got.
Okay. Let's move on then to the consent agenda. Before I ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda, are there any items any trustee would like left off for further discussion?
Mike Tennis here. I'd like to leave off the consent agenda item A10 as an orange.
A10.
Balance sheet for December.
Okay. Any other items to be left off from anyone? Okay, hearing none, then I would like a motion to approve the consent agenda items A1A through A1N and A1P and A1Q. May I have such a motion?
Mike Tennis, so move.
Mike, second?
Second, Dave Nutt.
Dave seconded. Okay, Nikki, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Dave,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki is yes. Christina,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, may I have a motion? Well, I think we can just go this way. Mike, what's your objection, or what's your, not an objection, but a question?
No, I think you have to motion first and then we can discuss.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve A1Q as part of the consent agenda?
A10.
A10. Nikki
sorry.
motions to, for A10, balance sheet of December 2020.
Yes.
Mike Tennis, second.
Okay, Mike, what's your question?
My question is the very first item on the balance sheet, the checking account. Do we really have over $4 million in non-interest bearing general corporate checking account at year end?
That doesn't necessarily mean not interest bearing. This isn't, the balance sheet isn't divided between things that don't bear any interest and things that bear interest. The investments are the longer term things and are what's included in the in that general corporate line are things like our Illinois funds accounts. So it's our sweep of, our accounts with First American Bank, and our one of which is a money market type product, and the other is, and then the other one is our regular payroll account that we pay out of, and then our Illinois funds is included in that as well, and that's similar to a money market.
Okay. Which is what I thought. There's a large piece of Illinois funds in there, which I believe in the past have been classified, at least last year at this time, was classified under investments.
No.
In account 10510, I think it was. Last year there was. So it just showing such a huge amount of money in general checking as opposed to investments. especially when Illinois funds tends to be, we're investing in Illinois funds, as I understand it, Brian, because we don't plan on using those funds near term, so they are somewhat longer term and are really an investment as opposed to available for use.
Yeah, that's accurate. I'm gonna try to go. I don't think we changed how those were reported, but I'll pull up one from last year to see it. Lauren or Roxanne, I don't know that those were reported differently in previous fiscal years.
I don't believe so. They certainly weren't when I was here, but it, you know, I don't know, and unless Lauren changed something last year, but I rather doubt it.
Right.
Yeah. All you have to do is look at the balance sheet in the Board of Trustee package for last year, the 1231 package. You'll see account 10510, general corporate investments of 787,000. That's not it. Balance sheet this year. That account is not shown in this year's report.
Didn't we move money because of potentially the renovation? Where did that money go?
That's possible. I have not looked at that. I would say that right now our Ellers account is not yielding, other than the longer term ones, you know, the shorter term. We would have been moving to shorter term investments because of the plan to do renovation. So we wouldn't have been putting stuff in 5 years out, you know, that sort of thing. And the ability to earn interest, I mean, interest rates are in the basement right now. So what Ellers can get for us and what we can earn in Illinois funds, there's not much of a difference. And at one point, Illinois funds was actually a better deal than Ellers could get for us, because Ellers charges the management fees. And we do have to, you know, balance that out. So, but we did not include a cash flow analysis update in this month's board packet. Lauren had prepared a draft, but I need time to really, you know, look at it and understand it. And so Heather and I were going to do that, or Heather was going to do that next month. And as a matter of fact, someone from Ellers has offered to come out and do a presentation for the board. So I would say we could, if the board would like to hear from them next month, we can certainly include a presentation from them on it, and we can look at the whole picture. Does that address your concern, Mike?
Yes, well, I don't know if it's necessary for Ellers to come out at this point in time. We just need to be sensitive, keep monitoring the interest, because just in the last 2 weeks, interest basis points went up, I think, about 29 basis points on 10-year Treasury. So it's starting to turn again.
Okay, well, that's good, but we can't go out 10 years. So, you know, I don't know what's happening on the shorter term.
And Mike, you are right. There was the small, it looked like about 150,000 that was carried in that 10-5-10 account line that's not showing up now. I don't think that's Illinois funds, but I'm not quite sure what it is. So it might be something be interesting to look into, Roxanne.
Okay. Will do.
Mike, does that answer your question sufficiently?
Yeah.
Okay, then we have a roll call vote then on A10.
Dave,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes, yes,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki is yes. Christina,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes. Okay, moving on to, there is no unfinished business, so we'll move on to new business. The first item under C1 is ordinance 2021-01, non-residence cards. May I have a motion to adopt ordinance 2021-01 non-residence cards?
So moved. It's Brian.
Brian, second?
Seconded, Chris.
Chris. Okay, this is an ordinance we look at every year. Although we don't have any non-residents, I guess, in our district that aren't, that don't have library coverage, we do have non-residents that own or lease property in our district. And they are entitled to the use of our library through a library card. And this ordinance allows that to take place, as well as, am I correct that this is a requirement that libraries must pass every year
Yes.
as part of, what is it? What organization requires that?
Well, it's part of the certification process for our, to be able to get our per capita grant and,
Exactly.
et cetera. We do that through Rails every year. I mean, we're not required to, libraries are not required to issue non-resident cards, not required to participate in the non-resident program, but they are required to make a decision every year whether they are or are not. And if they are, they need to pass a resolution.
Any discussion?
Do we have
Okay,
any,
Nikki.
has anybody taken advantage of it? Heather, do you know? Roxanne stepped away. So do you know, has anyone taken advantage of that?
We have a couple people who lease property in the district who do have library cards and they re-up every year. They like our digital resources.
Nice. Okay. Well,
It's a good thing for someone who's got a business here, who's leasing business property, and their lease is including paying those, paying the property taxes, but they don't actually own the building. And they're entitled to a library card through this. And so it helps us to serve our business community as well.
Anything else before we vote? Nikki, could we have a roll call, please?
Dave,
Yes.
Chris.
Yeah.
Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki is yes. Christina,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, item C2, minimum wage requirement. May I have a motion to approve the updated salary scale as presented?
Nikki will motion.
Second, please.
Seconded.
Dave,
by
seconded.
Dave.
Okay, what we did have, Mike had sent in some comments on that. But before we get to your comments, Mike, I'd like to ask Roxanne and Heather to just explain to us how they came up with the scale that has been presented.
Yeah, and I'm going to pass that right on over to Heather.
So last year, the board approved in January a salary scale increase dependent upon a minimum wage increase in July. The way minimum wage increases changed last year, so we actually had a minimum wage increase in January as well. Thankfully, it had a very minimal impact on our salary scale. We just had to bump up a couple people to $11. So this salary scale takes into place two minimum wage increases, the one that happened in January and the one that will happen next January on the 22nd. We figured rather than have it increase a little bit in July and then need to bump it up again in January, and the one that will happen next January will have a bigger impact in terms of staff salaries increasing on the low end. So it does include 2 years worth of increases basically for this one.
Not,
Yeah.
not that staff are going to get those,
Yeah.
2 years worth of increases at a time. The salary scale is just our framework. It sets that bottom end.
Yeah, but
It's
most
got a top end in it, but nobody ever gets close to the top end. So really it's the bottom end that's operable.
yeah.
Right, and we have to remember that this minimum wage is going to increase, I think, for the next 3 years anyway. Every year, $1 an hour,
Right.
up to a maximum of 15. So we're going to see that bottom number change as we go from year to year. So I think since effectively there's going to be 2 increases in the one budget year, I think you're doing the right thing to anticipate it and reflect it, so we don't have to change it again so quickly. With that, Mike, you had some comments
Yes.
on this. Would you like to explain your comments to us?
When I came onto the board, the first time we addressed the salary structure, if memory serves me, I was told that the salary scale was reviewed every 3 years. And so there was a change at that point in time, my first year as a trustee. And then the minimum wage situation set in, calling for increases every 6 months. So it started posing problems to the bottom end of the salary scale. And I certainly want us to adhere to the minimum wage rates, and so the administration's recommendation on 2E makes a lot of sense, but I'd like to have a discussion on fees on the current scale for non-exempt and also regarding exempt personnel. And the reason for that is we all have a fiduciary duty to recognize economic conditions, and U.S. retail sales fell for the 3rd straight month per the Commerce Department report. Surprisingly, when that report came out last week, online sales were even down 6%. State unemployment last week was over 96,000, according to the Illinois Department of Employment Security, and over 362,000 in the state received traditional unemployment benefits last week alone. And I was surprised to read, I believe the source was Kane County Connect on this, that there's 45,000 renters in Kane County, and the county estimates 22,000 of those renters are currently delinquent. And the unemployment report at the county level was reported at 6.2% as of the end of November. December's numbers aren't out yet for local unemployment, but you take all those factors in, and then you need to recognize that before you start making wholesale change to a salary scale when people are really struggling in our district. Inflation, the property tax cap, and even the library revenue. When you look at that, in November, our tax levy was capped at 2.3%, but that's really built off of a year before. We get the numbers in early January based on 12-month period ended December of 2019, which is then levied at the end of December 2020. And then the CPI over the last 12 months, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, was up 1.4%. And then even looking in our own library for the last 6 months, when you exclude the license renewals, which are pretty much an offset with the expenses, library revenue is only up 1%. Since salaries are the primary driver of the operating costs of the district for the library, I think it would be prudent for the library district to consider freezing all of the non-exempt 2 shelvers, or possibly consider 1.4% as opposed to what's been presented, 3.28% increase. It is just a guideline, but it sends the wrong message if we go ahead and approve it as presented.
Just clarification, the non-exempt shelvers, though, that's actually the minimum wage group that we would have.
Right. That we should change, but that should be the only change, is what I'm advocating.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, the concern is
any other
compression.
comments? Are there any other comments from trustees before we go any
I
further?
would like to understand what you mean by compression. What is, because you use compression in the explanation. What exactly do you mean by that?
It means those bands get really close together. So there isn't much of a differential. So then you end up hiring people in for a substantially higher skilled job, and you're offering them something really close to what, for example, a shelver at the bottom tier is getting. It just makes it really hard to fill those positions.
But I guess my question to you is, just because that's the bottom, why are they hired at that bottom?
That's been our practice, unless they're experienced, because we're typically not hiring people with experience when we're starting out. Because we can't compete with the neighboring libraries, even at this, in this scale. We are below our libraries on all sides of us.
See that?
I haven't looked at Ella Johnson, but Algonquin and Huntley and Elgin and Barrington. So really, our pool for hiring for those positions, it just makes it really hard to get them. And if we get them, and we move on very quickly.
Roxanne, are you saying that with respect to all of the all these levels?
It goes all the way up to management level. Yeah, the salary scale was developed. Now we should be looking. Mike mentioned that when he started, we were doing salary evaluation every 3 years, and what that would result in is some fairly significant adjustments. We should still be doing every 3 years. The library should be really looking at it and evaluating these from a market standpoint to see, are we too far ahead? Are we too far below? What Lauren did, Lauren developed a series of salary scale so a series of escalations to take into account the automatic increase in the bottom wages, in the minimum wage, and to not get too far out of whack with the spread between those, so that we could stay competitive, with the expectation that would help us stay competitive. I would suggest, in this case, we're looking at skipping one and going 2 years, which is why you're seeing a little bit larger. advance than she had anticipated. But that's because she was figuring, her calculations were based on them changing in every July, not every January. And so we need to be, because we're using this as a budget document, we're not actually going to be hiring people in on this scale other than meeting the minimum wage. We're not going to be hiring people in on this scale until the new budget year. But we need to pass it so that we know what to do our calculations based on.
Mhm.
So, back to Mike's comments, because I think I agree with the fiduciary duty, given the local economy. And I can tell you, working for a school district, I don't think this is going to be a year that we're going to all expect to receive very big raises. I certainly don't. But I'm almost wondering if some of the arguments that Mike brought forward will apply more when it comes time to what sort of annual raise pool and things are applied. Does this really more, Roxanne, do you see it more as like sort of flexibility in filling some of those positions with
Yeah.
new hires, and that's where it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're
Question.
muted, Chris.
Just for clarification, you said that we are on that low end percentage of all the surrounding. How do you know? Can you give me an idea of how much lower we are?
Off the top of my head, I would be reluctant to do that. Heather, do you have any a better sense of that?
Well, to give an example of one of them that I looked at when I was kind of making this or working on the salary scale for this, the next up from library clerk would be or not library clerk, from shelver would be library clerk. And in general, for libraries in this area, it ranges from about $375 for current budget to $1,735. So at our current rate of 14, we're on the lower rate of that.
And are we at the lowest rate of all of us?
$1,375 would be the lowest rate for this area. But a lot of places do pay $1,735 for the same position.
Thank you.
Mike Tennis, question again. Each one of the bands, as I understand it, has a 40% range, which should not preclude hiring anybody because it doesn't fit. There's a lot of flexibility in each band. And so there's nothing.
That's why I asked about hiring, and they hire in without experience at the very lowest.
Right.
So yeah, there's flexibility, but that changes the whole way that they've been hiring.
Right.
It's just a change in practice. Just if the candidates are out there that you need, you hire them in within the range, and you justify it, documenting as to why so there's no allegations of discrimination or anything. You hire the qualified candidate, offer them within that 40% range within each band. If they have the skill set that warrants that they come in at the midpoint in the range, you hire them at the midpoint. If they're warranted to be brought in at the high end of the range, you hire them at the high end of the range. Otherwise, why even have a band?
That's a good point. It introduces, I think the reason the practice has been the way that it has been, so that it's unusual to hire someone in above that, is because we're real sensitive to hiring someone who might be earning more than someone who has been here for a couple of years and started when the range was much lower and hasn't advanced very far.
But couldn't that still happen?
It could. It could. It typically doesn't happen here because we've hired in at the bottom most of the time. One of the things that we did, I understand, between when I retired and now, was eliminate a practice that had been longstanding in the library of hiring in at the very bottom of the range, and then after a candidate had worked at the library successfully for a year, automatically moving them, you know, with a successful evaluation that met all of the criteria, giving them a significant bump that was 12% above or 12.5% above that bottom. It's what we call the low mid. And that's the one-time bump that someone would get once they had been here for a year. Implementing this, the advancements every year in the salary scale, that was one of the things that Lauren eliminated, one of the practices that Lauren eliminated in our hiring processes. So, you know, we can change how we manage the process. We'll do whatever the board, whatever the board likes. But this remains our recommendation, is that the board pass what was presented.
When I first joined the board, one of the real concerns was that the salary scale really had not been addressed as it should have been. And as a result, we had to make significant changes to create the scale system that you see here. There weren't as many divisions in that. And it caused, there were all kinds of problems with morale of the employees, with retention. And so the board decided that it needed to have a thorough top to bottom review of the salary scale with a commitment never to let that thing sit without being updated on a regular basis so we can remain competitive as we can be. And so I just can't agree with letting the salary system, our scale, get compressed at any level. I think for it to be a tool to use for recruitment, for retention, it needs to move along with situations like we see with the bottom end. And this is going to continue now for 2 or 3 more years. So we dare not let that thing compress, or we're going to have trouble in the lower 3 or 4 levels. And as it was said, we typically, and it's been the history as far as the length of time I've been on the board, we typically hire at the low end of the scale and move them up within the scale over time. So we've got to make sure that that bottom level stays in a competitive position. So I think we should go along with this salary scale. It's not a guarantee that somebody's gonna get a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7% raise. It's a merit based raise system that we have, and so I think it would be a mistake not to continue what we've been doing.
Roxanne, have you received any feedback from any of the employees who hit 1 year in the last year? I
haven't, but I haven't been here very long.
I have to imagine that is a killer for them, right?
That there wasn't the increase?
Yeah.
We didn't advertise that there would be.
Okay.
So it was always a really nice surprise for them, and it was a way of letting them know that we really value them as an employee and we want them to stick around.
Do you know why that was eliminated?
I believe because of the increase in, that was made in the last salary scale. You know, as Lauren was implementing this plan and looking at the budget implications for the library.
So that sort of bump was absorbed in this kind of distribution of it.
Right.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I think that we can feel confident that we do a good job with our fiduciary duties to our taxpayers. When you look at where we hit in relation to other communities in the area, I think that we're doing just fine in that regard. So anything we can do to attract and retain talented people, without the people, the library doesn't exist. So I would be in favor of doing this.
Yeah, I know we just got through saying a lot of great things early in the meeting about everything that's going on in the library, and I know that I've always felt like the lack of you know, if I ever felt like I was not being paid enough, or that the salary system was not fair to me, then it could be a disincentive. I don't know that I've ever looked at, you know, at bonuses or that kind of thing and thought, well, I'm going to work any harder. But if we I don't know, by not supporting management on this, I just feel like we are, you know, it would not be it could be detriment to morale. That's
Agreed.
I would just like, there's two comments I'd like to make. First of all, if we were like pushing on the higher end of the percentage in comparison to other libraries, I would think, yes, we do have a fiduciary responsibility to look at that. We're not. The second thing, and Mike, I agree with what you're saying. You do have flexibility within your band, but you said something that kind of put up a red flag to me, and that was that you have to be careful to do that, make sure that there isn't that discriminatory process in where you put the people entering into the salary scale. And it seems like the way we're managing it right now, we don't worry about that. We start with people at the lower level and then progress them up. I would not like to see us get into a situation where we may be accused of a discriminatory accusation, because for our community vision, that's just not something I would want to have happen to us. So I understand what you're saying, Mike, and I do appreciate that flexibility of which you spoke, but I have concerns with that.
I agree, Chris. I thought the same thing, that when you add that subjectiveness into the process, that you fall into traps, maybe subliminally, maybe not, maybe just the allegation and you didn't actually, it just, I think that's dangerous. And I think the practice that they have in place makes the process more objective, which I think is smart.
Any other comments? If none, can we go to a roll call vote, please?
Dave,
yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
No.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki is yes. Christina,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, going on to item C3, per capita grant application. Since this is discussion only, no motion is needed. Roxanne or Heather, can you take it from there?
Yeah, Heather prepared this, so it's all yours, Heather.
So normally you all see this in November, but because of COVID, it's been delayed. I actually prepared it in advance of the due date, which is March 15th, just because I knew we had a lighter board meeting agenda this time, and I didn't want you guys to have too much on your plate. However, with the new incoming presidential president, we might be looking at a new census coming out very soon. And in that event, we'll probably delay submitting this to the Illinois State Library in the event that we might be able to have a slightly larger population due to census results than we had before. Obviously, we'd still want to meet the deadline, and we still wanted the board to discuss it. But if we do have the census, we feel like our population has probably grown since 2010. So we would hold out for that.
And address it next month then?
I don't know that it needs to come back to the board. I think you can discuss it. The only thing that would change would be the population numbers.
Okay.
And so I think
we don't have to pass anything. This is literally, do we have any questions?
Right,
Here's the document we're going to submit. So,
right.
There's not much in here to review, really. It's sort of just checking the boxes. So I'm fine with it as written, and I would agree though in holding off if we think that the population may be higher if we have new census numbers before it's due.
Is the per capita grant allowance of $1.47.5, is that the same as it was last year?
I believe so. Yeah.
Is it?
It went up from a couple years ago. At one point, it was less than that, but I think it's the same as last year.
Yeah, because it was $1.25 for a number of years, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it was up to $1.25. The legislation was up to $1.25, and the legislature decided in the budget process every year how much they were going to allocate. So there were many years when we didn't even receive the $1.25. And then they started fully funding it several years ago, and have done that maybe for the last 5.
Okay.
But I don't know where the state's budget process is this year.
I don't know.
It hasn't started.
It have the.
And there's a $4 billion deficit projected. So there is some risk that the full amount may not be appropriated.
Right. Yeah. So, but in any case, if we have if census figures are released, and we have the opportunity to record, to determine our, what our accurate population is, because we're still using 2010 population figures. And there's been a lot of new housing that's come online in our district since 2010. So
Sure.
Particularly in the last, 3 years, 4 years. Definitely there's been an increase, but we have to have the new census, and we can't just, we have to have documented proof of how much it's changed before we can submit a different figure in the per capita and request a different reimbursement rate. So.
Any other comments or questions? If not, we'll leave it at that and move on to C4, which is a 3-year contract for internet and phone service from Comcast. May I have a motion to authorize the director to enter into a new 3-year service agreements with Comcast Business to provide internet, telephone lines, and network and telephone equipment for the Dundee and Randall Oaks libraries with a maximum value of $39,000 or $13,000 on an annual basis.
So moved.
So moved.
So moved from Brian. Second, please. Chris seconded. Roxanne, why don't you tell us about this?
This seems like a no-brainer. We
I
have
feel like
in
there's got to be a catch.
I know, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, how is this possible? Like,
yeah,
that's
actually, as
amazing savings.
John, are you there? Are you in the call?
Yes.
You want to fill the board in on the how this came about?
Sure. So basically, like late November, we were Mary was reviewing the Comcast bill, and she noted that there were going to be some increases in some service. And so she said, did I want to take a look at that? And I said, yeah. And I gave a call to Comcast and went to their business retention group. And basically, we talked a little bit, and he said, well, we have some promos going on. It requires you to redo your contracts, and we think we could save you some money and also get you on a better platform. And I said, okay, send me more information. And I got the information, and it looked like a good deal. And that's pretty much it. That's how we came about this particular plan.
Yeah, these were separate before, the Comcast internet and then the Comcast business phone service were two separate deals, and so it didn't need to come to the board. It wasn't large enough to need to come to the board. So we were spending this, money, but it was in, in agreements that timed out at different times. One was just an annual, one was a 3-year, and so yeah, it was a chance to pull it all together. And I would also say there's a real benefit to doing this because one of the things that we had been doing with our internet and phone was applying for E-rate grants, which is a process, which is a lengthy, very, very time-consuming process, lots of paperwork. Was something that Lauren got started for us because we never used to apply for it before because of the amount of work. Since Lauren got us started, the E-rate program has changed what they pay for, and our actual E-rate reimbursements have gone down, down, down every year. And it has gotten to the point where the amount of work that it will take for Heather to learn the whole E-rate process and go back through that, putting this out to bid is not worth it to do the E-rate anymore. And so we're gonna reap more than the benefit of what we would lose by not doing E-rate by going with this contract. So I think it's a real win-win all the way around.
And faster internet speed.
And faster internet speed and better phones and yeah.
Any other comments? Well, I think this is another example of where our employees are looking at the bills and anticipating maybe some potential increases and then taking some action to avoid it.
Yeah, so kudos to Mary and John for
Mary
pointing it out and John for checking it out.
Exactly. Exactly. So our employees continue to amaze us that they keep looking for wherever we can save some money. And the purchasing group proves that year after year after year. So kudos to our folks.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I really think that should be like in the newsletter or something like that. Our community knows that you guys are doing this for them, because this is not something the board would even be aware of. So, you know, toot your own horn and put it in the newsletter or put it on the website or something. They need to know that you're looking out for them.
Yeah. Point well
That's
taken.
great. Yeah.
That's fiduciary.
Okay.
That's how we fulfill our responsibility for fiduciary. You know, taking good care of spending the taxpayers' dollars in an efficient manner.
Yeah. Yeah. I take my hat off to you folks. Any other discussion? Okay, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Dave,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mike. Mike? Oh, you're muted.
Muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes.
Nikki is yes. Christina?
Yes.
And Richard?
Yes. I seem to have lost the picture. I'm not sure how to get it back, but maybe I'll do that. There we go. Amazing. Okay. This evening, trustees have any before we adjourn? None? Okay, may I entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Brian? And second by Dave. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Dave,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki is yes. Christina,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes, we are adjourned at 8:53 p.m. Thanks, everybody. See you next month.